Apple shares soar one day after the company unveils its AI plans. I'm Lisa Bernhard with Reuters, and joining me today is Shana Orczyk, Sissel of Banríon Capital Management. Shana, yesterday when the company unveiled its AI plans, as I mentioned, and said it had a partnership with ChatGPT, the stock ended up closing down almost 2%. Why is that?
I think the initial reaction from professional investors specifically was that it wasn't as sexy an announcement as expected. There wasn't anything so amazing that got people excited. But, if you had a chance to reflect on it overnight, you would realize that what it could do and should do is increase demand for iPhone sales, which is kind of the bread and butter of Apple. And that while none of these tools that they're adding are going to blow you away, they are quite interesting. And you need to have an iPhone 15 Pro in order to gain access to them or upgrade in the next upgrade cycle. And I think that is overall positive for Apple's business. And that is why the stock has jumped up today.
So yes, to your point and to my intro, the stock is soaring today. You have followed Apple shares for a long time. So what's your general feeling about the stock, which has lagged prior to this compared to its mega cap tech giants? What's your feeling about the stock going forward?
So for background, I started following the stock kind of a long time ago, February 2007. I used it as my pitch and job interview with a major asset manager, and the PM that I was interviewing with called me an idiot because at the time I had a $100 price target and the stock was trading at like $10. But my reason behind it was this was right before the iPhone launched, and I had a Mac at the time, and I realized there was a potential here to kind of create an ecosystem, and that kind of played out. I think that you cannot underestimate that ecosystem. No one wants to be the green bubble in a chat. No one. I know that's like a huge reason I stick with it. And over and above, like once you're in the system, it's really hard to get out of it. So even if it's not the best AI or the most groundbreaking, it takes a lot to get people to leave the ecosystem. And for that reason, I think that you can't underestimate Apple's power. Overall, I think the announcement yesterday gives new life to potential for the upgrade cycle for the iPhone, and that is positive for Apple. And I still think that even though they were later to the game than some others as it pertains to AI, as long as they continue to incorporate these things into their products, it will be very hard to pull people out of the ecosystem.
Okay, let's switch and talk about shares of GameStop, which have plummeted ever since Keith Gill, aka Roaring Kitty, returned with a live stream, his first since 2021 on Friday. What do you think about this company going forward? Is the movie sequel, should it get made, not going to have as happy an ending for some retail investors as it did the first go around? Maybe for Keith Gill, we don't know, but what do you think?
I don't think it'll have a happy ending. That stock started trading down even before he went live the other day. So that was due to the fact that the company unexpectedly, preemptively reported worse than expected earnings and guidance that came out of nowhere. So when he did go live, he didn't give much confidence in why the stock should go up. I think people can kind of see through that. And for that reason, overall, there's not a lot to like with that stock. There's not a lot of positive story here. There's not a lot of potential ways I can see for a turnaround. And if you're buying into it because Keith Gill owns it, then that is probably not the best reason to buy into a stock. And maybe, just maybe, the retail audience is starting to see through that.
Okay, let's move to macroeconomic news because tomorrow is the Consumer Price Index report and also the conclusion of the Federal Reserve's two-day meeting. So a big day in terms of inflation numbers and what the Fed may or may not do. What are you anticipating?
So I think the Fed will hold pat. I think they will continue with their hawkish language. I think the CPI print is interesting. We had a relatively good CPI print last month. For the first time in a while. We had several months where it was coming in hotter than expected. It was the first time it didn't do that. But I have concerns because there are some liquidity things going on broadly in terms of the Fed selling off its balance sheet. It kind of has decreased the amount that they're selling right now, which is positive for liquidity. There's some fiscal policy going on that pushes demand up. So this is an interesting number to me. I don't think it'll be crazy. I don't think it'll, be much higher than expectations, but I would keep an eye on it just because I think that there's some tailwinds to inflation that are not positive, that are coming, which are concerning. And I think for that reason, the Fed's going to hold pat because I think they see it too. The market's pricing in a 51% chance of a September rate cut. There's a higher probability of a December rate cut. I'm more inclined to December, although I've kind of all along said I didn't think it would be this year. I think if it is going to be this year, it's going to be December. I don't think it'll be September.